You're listening to the Design Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whyte, and in this podcast series, we explore the career journeys of design and engineering leaders from the world of physical product development. On today's episode, I'm joined by Ashley Syed, CEO of Supply Chain Pro, a company set up to connect product developers with a trusted network of suppliers and manufacturers. Prior to Supply Chain Pro, Ash spent years working in hardware development for some of the world's most recognisable brands. And during the episode, we discuss his journey from product design through to design leadership and then on to supply chain and operations. He shares his advice for young entrepreneurs and how he balances his career, family and health. There's a ton to get into on this one, so let's get on with it. Ash, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me. So, I've got a few notes here from your LinkedIn profile. So, CEO, product developer and technology expert. Over 25 years taking complex electronic products from prototype to mass production. You've delivered world-class products for Google, Philips, TomTom, BAT and Philip Morris over those years and into 30 markets worldwide. You've managed multi-million-dollar budgets. And on top of all that, you've also got your own YouTube channel. You've pitched Dragon's Den and getting funding from Peter Jones. You've developed the first smartphone for Microsoft and was even on BBC's MasterChef. So I'm honoured to have you on the show. And thank you so much for joining me. So
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. So why don't you tell us kind of a little bit about yourself and what you're up to? Obviously, I've gone through some highlights there, but maybe in your own words.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for very kind introduction. I think as a basic introduction to myself, people that don't know me, my career spanning over 25 years now has been always in product development, mainly consumer electronics, and really from concept ID all the way through to mass production, with a real big focus on connecting the design and product development process with design for manufacture and of course manufacturing in Asia. So I spent probably half of my career both in Europe and also in Asia. So working with some of the brands and products that you mentioned earlier. So that's really my passion, and I love to get products and technologies into the market and hopefully make a difference to people's lives.
Wonderful. So, you've like I said, you've worked at some big brands over the years, and it's interesting how your career has morphed as well from engineer through to kind of the different businesses you're involved with and the more kind of strategic top level roles. So we'll talk about that in a little while. But why don't we start at the beginning then? So you studied at the University of Westminster, if I've got that right. So studied product design engineering.
Yep.
And there's a psychology element on there as well. Is that right?
Yes, that was one of the spare modules or free modules back then, as it was called. So always been interested in psychology, and yes, I was quite lucky to be able to study that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. You've it's quite interesting, isn't it, having that insight and how that will affect the decisions you make in design and kind of how that impacts your users, because it's all about the psychology of it. So why product design engineering then? What kind of drew you down that kind of career path or kind of academic path to start with?
I think from school days, I never was a great academic at school. I was suffered from short attention span, and but always had that kind of entrepreneurial way of thinking. Really enjoyed what was called CDT back then, craft design technology. Just loved being in the workshop making things. And started off with woodwork, and my CDT teacher, Mr. Morton. So if you're out there, it's everything really is. It all started from there. So I did A levels in design technology and actually business studies, which kind of summarizes everything that I've done in my career, which is really cool. So I think, I knew that I wanted to get into product design, and but I also was aware of the engineering aspect, because I didn't just want to be conceptual only, and that's mainly just because I'm crap at drawing, and as people do all of these renderings and stuff and great ID, I could never do that, to be honest. So I knew I needed the engineering aspect, and I just like taking things apart and putting them back together again. So that was why I chose that degree, and it was really, really interesting.
Bro, and so did you have engineering in the family then? Is that kind of what led you down that path? Made you no?
No, not at all. No one's technical at all. So I don't know where that come from, to be honest.
It's interesting because thinking back to my childhood and studies, my dad's an electrician, and my parents were pushing me into engineering as a career when I was younger, and I think looking back, because they were pushing me down that path, I rebelled against it, and and now I'm a recruiter. But it's interesting how much influence people. And you mentioned Mr. Morton, was it as well? Had a big impact on you. So it's funny how those things just pop into your head, isn't it? You probably hadn't thought about him for quite some time, and then just looking it out there when you're talking about those things. So wonderful. So perhaps tell us a little bit about your journey then from kind of University of Westminster, how you ended up working for the likes of Google, who were Motorola, I believe, at the time, and then
it was Motorola,
took over. Yeah. So how did that opportunity come about then?
Yeah, so I think really what happened was after I graduated, then I really wanted to get into product design, and so that was really my focus, and it was difficult. I had to go back home and still apply for jobs. But then I got a lucky break. I actually started my career working for Fujitsu in Birmingham, and that was as a graduate design engineer, and I really was just kind of going through the motions there, just it was a big corporate company, and so I actually, because I was in Birmingham, I wanted to go back to London actually, and I had a recruiter, and she called me up, says, "Oh, I've got this great job. It's at a mobile phone development company." And it's kind of a startup. And I thought, this is brilliant, but it's in Birmingham. I was like, okay, well, I'll go along anyway. Just kind of hone my interview skills and get my portfolio. It forced me to get my portfolio back at that time, get my portfolio up to date and stuff like that. So went along and met my then who was to become my boss, and definitely my mentor, Jeff Lee, who interviewed me, and we got on very well, and we just I actually spent all night doing my portfolio, and expected to go through it all and discuss all of the projects and everything that I've learned, and we had an interview for an hour and a half, and didn't really look at my portfolio at all. We just half of the interview we talked about football. So we just got on, and I was like, "Oh, do you want to look at my portfolio?" And he goes, "No, you've got the job. When you start, kind of thing." So that was great. So that was Sendo, which was the UK's first and only mobile phone developer, and that was a really fast growing startup. I think I was number 7 into Sendo, and it was set up by ex Motorola and Philips people, and so that was Hugh Brogan was the CEO. So that was an amazing experience, because I went from just stale corporate into very dynamic, fast-moving startup. I mean, Sendo was crazy, and what we were able to achieve in such a short space of time, basically launching a mobile phone. And you got to remember, this was 2000, and when Nokia was king, and Ericsson, and of course Motorola. So we were the ones to really develop affordable phones. That was launched with Virgin Mobile at the time, and we also worked on the very first smartphone as well, to what we know as smartphones today.
Yeah, that was a great time, wasn't it, for phone development? Because you think, obviously, you can't think of a time without kind of smartphones now. They're everything, but that kind of period of time, I remember there's so many kind of different ideas coming out in terms of flip phones and screens. I think I loved my was it the Sony phone that had polyphonic ringtone on it? And you could record your own. I remember when I was at college downloading like the Mario theme tune or something with 4 different tones at a time. It's like, whoa, check this out, guys. And then I had an LG phone that had a screen on the front of the clamshell that was a mirror when it wasn't on, and then you could flick around, it would turn around and everything. It's like, wow, this is isn't technology great? But yeah, they're all kind of dinosaurs now when you look back to it. But what a time. So
it was. A lot of mechanical and electronics, invention and innovation going on at that time. It was very interesting.
Yeah, very different considerations as well. A lot of the similar tests, I guess, in terms of drop tests, etc. Now, because there's more screens, it's like what glass or plastic do you use, and considering kind of the heat and everything. But those days, with flip phones, it's like, I guess you've got a test rig to open and close it, and you got just certain things that you don't even need to consider now with most smartphones. Although I guess the bendable ones that certain companies are putting out, I suppose. But interesting. So I don't remember Sendo as a brand. Did they launch their own phones under the Sendo brand, or was that?
They were launched under the Sendo brand, and co-branded under different operators. So Virgin obviously was in the UK. So I mean, we grew very, very quickly, and we actually engineered a customizable phone at that time. So we developed an engine which had all of the components of a mobile phone: the PCB, the keypad, of course the display and antenna, speaker, etc. And then we were able to design different covers, rear and covers. So we could change the spec. You can go up through the tiers, so. Through Sendo, we then expanded and had offices in Singapore, and I moved out to Singapore and then worked more on the design for manufacture and setting up the manufacturing lines and looking at the quality and working really the first introduction into contract manufacturing side of things, because we had a contract manufacturer in China. So that was really, really interesting.
Wow, big move then. So going from Birmingham to Singapore, that was very exciting, but daunting time, I imagine. So how did you cope with all that change?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because I was on business in South Korea, actually, in Seoul, because we had a supplier there doing in mold label or in mold foil. For our bezels, and I was coming back, and my boss called me and said, I wanted to go by Singapore and drop off some of the samples, whatever. So I'd never been to Singapore. I didn't really know much about the country, and landed there, spent about a week there, and just fell in love with the place, really, the culture, the food, and the weather and everything else. So, and obviously we had an office there, so. Went back and asked for a transfer, and that got very quickly vetoed. Basically kept going and managed to get the transfer in the end. So that was a really big decision at the time, because I actually bought a house in Birmingham at that time and was quite settled there. I'd been there for about 3 years or so. But I just had this I don't know, this thing that I just couldn't get out of my head, that I just had to go there, and really to kind of move myself, take myself outside the comfort zone, and that was the first time I'd really done that. It was definitely the best decision I ever made. So it was more exciting than daunting, I would say, and it was a great opportunity to expand my knowledge and horizons, to really see how obviously products are made, and on the quality side, and to understand how all of that side works, obviously along with the design and the engineering, which I was exposed to back in the UK.
Brilliant. I've got a question for you, actually, Ash. So just before we came on air, I had a message from a graduate who's just about to finish his master's. Met him at New Designers last year. Really impressive guy. Won awards for his products, and had interest from quite a few of the visitors. And his product, and I love this for Fania projects. It's kind of inspired by something that actually impacts him. So I think his father had Parkinson's, so he developed a system which was through haptic feedback would give a pulse, which would there's been kind of studies, and he did loads of research on this, studies that show people with Parkinson's, if they have a pulse or a kind of a rhythm kind of that they can hear or feel, it helps them continue the cadence of their walking. So it disrupts because you can just get stuck when you've got sometimes when you've got Parkinson's. So we developed this, and it's working prototype, and he's messaged me today to say that he's had interest in an incubator fund, but he's nervous about kind of taking that on, because what if it only runs up until Christmas, and then he might be out of work with no real world experience, so to speak, when all the graduate jobs are taken up in the summer. So I think I know what you're going to say, and the advice I would give him, but what would kind of, rather than me put words in your mouth, what would be your initial thoughts or advice to that young gentleman?
Well, I think first of all, I actually run an accelerator or an incubator myself, called the Central Research Laboratory, CRL, which is still going, I believe, which is focused on hardware startups, and so I've got a lot of understanding of certainly graduates or young entrepreneurs who have developed a new technology, and the problems that that they face, and and the decision, like what you're saying, right, which is, should I pursue an idea, or versus potentially going into the market and following a more kind of traditional route. I think there's no kind of one answer to fits all. I think ultimately the question to ask is are you solving a real problem, which of course that is valid in this case, and do you think what is your desire for that solution, and how passionate are you, and then ultimately is that something that can scale, and scale doesn't have to mean money scale. It can be beneficial as in the impact, so impact can mean scale as well. And so I think if those answer those questions are yes or positive, then certainly pursuing something like that would definitely be very beneficial, personally speaking, because I think, yes, look, you can go for a graduate job, and in fact, as I mentioned, that's exactly what I did. For me, it didn't work out. It was a complete waste of time, and in fact, I regretted those, because I wasted those years or those months and years when I probably could have been doing something else. But I mean, that's the benefit of hindsight. So I think that, and to do that with an incubator or an accelerator is actually a very good thing, because you've got the right people there and the support structure to be able to at least progress that idea from a concept or a prototype or an MVP into something that potentially could be a business. Now, I think that's also a very important question to be asking yourself as well, because you've got to be careful what you wish for, and you've got to be careful what you are going to get yourself into, because this is what happens, a lot of, it didn't have to be, it's not nothing to do with age, but as in inexperienced with bringing a product into market or commercializing an idea or a technology. At first, you're just thinking about solving that problem and bringing it to people, which of course is absolutely fine. But then, of course, the economics and the finance and the marketing and the sales and the people management and everything else then starts to then get attached to it all, which most people don't consider at first. So that's what the incubator and accelerator will certainly help you to introduce you to, and then you've got to really make a decision. So I think that just going through that process and having that experience is only a good thing, because if you've done it, and even if at the end, you decide that's not for you, or that's not a route that's feasible, or you can't pivot, or you do pivot, or whatever, then to say that you've done that, and to then verbalize that, whether that's through the interview process or through a blog or through a YouTube channel or whatever nowadays, it just gives you more content. It gives you more content to talk about. Yeah.
Well, you definitely regret the things you don't do in life more than the things that you tried and failed. That's certainly, and I've been thinking about. I wish I'd started something like this earlier. I thought about a podcast back in 2018, but I've left it till this year, launching Kodu to make it part of the whole kind of ecosystem there. But best thing I ever did was start my own business. And I was nearly 40 when I did it. So to have that chance I think it's asking the right questions, asking kind of whether I'm the right person to ask, but it's led to this kind of answer. So maybe so. We'll chat offline, and maybe I'll introduce you to him as well, because
I'll be more than happy. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, cool. Well, there we go. That's a nice little kind of interlude there. So and some great advice there. So in terms of where did we get to then? So we talked about Sendo, and then I guess it was a fairly natural move then, whilst you're in Singapore, to go and work for Motorola.
Yeah, well, what happened? Yes, what happened was Motorola bought Sendo, so it was a buyout. It happened quickly, and I mean, I was in Singapore, and so the buyout happened, and so then I just literally kind of changed office, because Motorola was very well established, especially in the mobile industry. At that point, of course, they were running off the success of the Razor, probably one of the best mobile phones ever engineered and mass-produced, and certainly one of the most popular. I'm sure slightly older listeners will know that. And if you're younger and you don't know what a Razor is, then Google it and have a look at it. It has some amazing technologies inside there. So was really pleased to go and work there, and that actually exposed me to a completely different area actually of design and engineering. Because Motorola at that point was so big, and they were literally shipping millions of phones. I mean, at Sendo it was tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So it was a real big step up. It's kind of getting into the Premier League of volume. Of volume manufacturing and design for manufacture. So that exposed me a lot to Six Sigma and design for Six Sigma and all of this kind of thing. So it really was, as far as the supply chain side of things, and either from a contract manufacturer or a tier 2 tier 3 supplier, whether that's the glass or the keypads or the antenna or, whatever that may be. It really was an interesting and a learning of how to design, and engineer at scale. So, that was the biggest kind of impact on me, and it was quite difficult to actually get a head around all of the Six Sigma stuff and the green belt and stuff that we had to get. So that was kind of Motorola. Then I think Motorola at that time was that they were struggling, and could kind of see that, I think. And I'd been in Singapore for 4 years or so, and starting to think about my next move, and through some discussions that I had, and found out about TomTom back in the UK. Of course, it's a Dutch company, TomTom, satellite navigation or personal satellite navigation. And at that point, again, that technology was really growing, and they weren't a startup, but they were kind of really at that mid, that high growth stage. So spoke to them, and I wanted to get to, again, just take myself outside that comfort zone, and instead of just managing design engineering teams, then go more into the project management or the technical project management side of things. And of course, TomTom really was a software company because of the navigation. Of course, it used the hardware to deliver that. So that was a really interesting aspect as well, the project management software as well as the technical side of things as well. So then landed up back in London.
Yeah, wow. So so you've it looks like you've jumped out of left businesses just at the right time as well, because finishing at Motorola, which I guess was taken over by Google before you left, 2005, so 2 years before the iPhone came along and ruined all the fun for everyone. And then TomTom, you were there until 2009, and I guess that would have been really where they were starting to struggle, I guess, because everything's moved on to phones now, hasn't it? I guess probably not so much in 2009 because it was still in that kind of transition period. But these days it's I'm not sure if they develop any hardware at all now, or if they do, it's very niche, isn't it?
No, I mean, what happened with TomTom? I mean, when I arrived, it was really about scaling up, the technology, and it was a one product company when I joined, and then really my role was, as head of design, was to create a roadmap of products, from entry level, mid tiered into premium and the high tier. And so we worked with two very good industrial design companies when I was there, Therefore and Native. And, so we had one doing the low and the mid, and then the other doing the high. And then it was really bringing in the design for manufacture at that point, so at this point was really, we worked a lot about, because prior to that, we do the industrial design. And then by the time we got to the engineers, it had grown in size, and of course, it just wasn't achievable because, they just weren't doing tolerance stack ups and things like this, and really understanding, what the technology inside needed to be, and so that, of course, that caused a lot of friction, right? So when at TomTom, it was really about bringing in the engineering and the understanding and the stack up and what we're trying to do, technically at the early industrial design stage. So that when we were doing the detailed designing and everything else, things pretty much stayed the same. So that was a really important part, and that really led to the success, as well as, of course, the software and software engineering that was going on in parallel at the time. So that led to incredible success over 3 years. I think over 20 million devices shipped, and TomTom then started moving into things like smartwatches at that time, and cameras and stuff like that. But then, of course, just like everything, people catch up and technologies change. And of course, once Google Maps started, coming out as beta, and then that was really the beginning of the end for PNDs, as we knew them at that time. And so then, I mean, did I know that? Yeah, I guess in the back of my mind, I did. That wasn't the reason why I left, why I moved on, but I had, an amazing opportunity, to go to the Netherlands, actually, and work for Philips, which was a brand and a company
huge,
that highly respected, and of course got a lot, used a lot of Philips products. So that was kind of my next step really on my journey.
Are you frustrated by drawn out recruitment processes, missing out on talent to your competition, or wasting time interviewing candidates who don't quite live up to their profile? Well, if you're the founder or leader of a physical technology brand or design consultancy, here's what we can do for you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Whyte, host of this podcast and the founder of Kodu, a specialist recruitment consultancy focused exclusively on physical product development. By working closely with you and your team, Kodu will help you improve your entire experience of hiring. We'll make it easier to identify, attract, and ultimately hire the very best design and engineering talent ahead of or from your competition. You'll only interview candidates who fit the brief, and we'll work with you to ensure you get the outcome you want, and fast, typically in 6 weeks or less. We have a 100% fill rate, and we guarantee to get you a positive outcome. Simply put, if we don't deliver, you don't pay. But how can I make such a claim? Well, the short answer is I've been doing this for a very long time. Kodu is built from over a decade of my own personal experience hiring hundreds of designers, engineers, managers and leaders, over 95% of whom are still in post 12 months later. I've personally built an incredible network of thousands of professionals in the physical product design and engineering space covering the UK, US and Europe. And I've taken what I've learned over the years and put the best of that into Kodu. So if you'd like to spend less time stuck in a recruitment loop and more time doing what you love, get in touch. Email me, chris@teamkodu.com, or message me on LinkedIn. But that's enough from me. Let's get back to the show. Well, yeah. So, spending a year or so in the Netherlands. I think it looks like you then went back to Singapore with a tech startup. You've been all over, haven't you? London, Switzerland with Philip Morris. You've worked for BAT as well at some point. I think we spoke when you were there, and then more recently. So why don't we kind of bring it up to date then? And so tell us what you're doing now then, and because it's more business consultancy and ventures and on the manufacturing side. If I'm right, is that?
Yeah, I think really what we're doing is supply chain. So it's Supply Chain Pro, and Supply Chain Pro really works with either product developers or anyone that's currently manufacturing products to either help them to set up a supply chain, and that can be from engineering, product development stage, all the way through to mass production and logistics. So what we do is obviously through my experience, I have a lot of very good suppliers and manufacturers that I've worked with over the years. And so those are fully vetted, by myself. I mean, I've been to those factories, I've worked with them, I've produced parts, assemblies, solved very, complex problems with those over the years, obviously working for different companies. So, the idea kind of come to me because, there isn't a place really where you can set up a supply chain and that those have been vetted and those have been actually checked. And so, so we work, like I say, either with someone that's looking to set up a supply chain, or someone that is very well established. They could be producing electromechanical products, and we help them to either improve a certain part of their supply chain, or we can set them up a new supply chain based on their KPIs. So, what we realise is, a product, of course, has its KPIs. That can be obviously target cost, unit cost. It can be lead time. There's obviously a technical challenge. Certain types of manufacturing processes that are needed in order to hit those KPIs. But then there's also business KPIs as well, and business KPIs can be around obviously sustainability. It can be around actually geolocation, because now there are restrictions, there are tariffs in working in certain or manufacturing and then shipping from certain countries to others, whether that's in Europe or in North America, for example. So the world is changing, and geopolitically, and whether you might already have a supply chain that may be out of date. And so what we work with our customers is to understand where their pain points are along that supply chain, and then we then basically set them up and help them to solve those pain points. So that's kind of on the customer side. And then, of course, we work on the other side, which is with the suppliers and manufacturers. So basically, they become part of our database or part of on our system, and then we work with them. We understand what they do, their strengths and their weaknesses. And then, of course, when our clients come to us and say, we need someone that can do flexible PCBs in a clean room environment, and it has to be made in Malaysia, then we can then connect them with the supplier or manufacturer, and in order for that supply chain to then meet the customer's KPIs, whether that's from a business perspective or from a product perspective.
Not too dissimilar to what I do then, Ash, but at a very different end of the process. So I'm linking kind of creatives and design engineers with businesses that need a product developing, and then you're working at the other end, introducing them to the getting their supply chain sorted. So full circle.
Yeah.
So how long's Supply Chain Pro been going now then? Because I think you're on LinkedIn, you're still in stealth mode.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we've been working on this now over the last few months, and we now, by the time this comes out, we'll be officially launched and stuff like this. So we got some really exciting projects and customers that we're working with at the moment, and it's all go.
I'll make sure to wait until you've launched then to release this. And when's the official launch date?
We will launch mid June officially.
Mid-June,
okay. we can talk about aligning that. Obviously, with this release.
Yeah, drop me a message, because we'll this will come out in a month or so anyway. So
that's fine.
We're kind of end of May now, so we'll be fine. So super. So let's talk about something we mentioned before we clicked record. So something I ask everyone that I speak to, and when I'm doing my day job, when I'm speaking to people who are looking for work, or kind of whether you call them candidates or just people, what's most important to you? Because ultimately, if even if the skill set aligns with what the business is looking for, if the values don't align, and you're not able to meet someone's medium to long term kind of ambitions and kind of and all that kind of stuff, then it's going to be a fairly frustrating experience for both parties. So I'll turn that question on you, because we mentioned it before before we started recording. But what's most important to you, Ash?
When hiring?
We could do two sections if you like. Yeah, because we mentioned about balance, weren't we? So that's the context, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, I think Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and it's something that I've definitely been thinking about and pondering, over the last few months because having setting up Supply Chain Pro, and I kind of touched on it earlier because kind of experience now, but then I talked about even if you're setting up or doing something new for the first time, to really think about what you're getting yourself into, and to understand potentially what those effects are. Now, whether you're a graduate or whether you're a seasoned professional, as you may call them, there are, in my mind, there are kind of three blocks, to kind of everything in your life. I'm getting really philosophical now, but this is the way that I see it. Of course, you've got your family, and whether you have a family, you're married, you have a partner, and obviously if you have children or whatever, or if not, if you're young and free and single, then of course you have your immediate family. So and then of course you've got your the career, or the career that you're intending to take part of, and then ultimately your health. Okay, and I think certainly in the past, I've worked in a very highly dynamic environments. That obviously is high stress, and it's definitely something that I enjoy and thrive in, that kind of entrepreneurial, fast-paced environment, and have achieved success. Have made more failures, more mistakes than success, definitely, and that's definitely led to my learning by consistently taking myself outside the comfort zone. But the problem is it does come at a cost. Okay, and I've always, out of those three things, there's always a priority, and the thing is that when you prioritize one, the other two will always suffer. And so, and this is not just me. I'm sure many listeners here who are part of a successful career that's had its ups and downs. And I've done this myself. I've prioritized my career over family and over health, and I think this is a problem. This is why I'd like to bring it up, because we're under, of course, lots of pressure, whether it's cost of living and looking after our own families. So that of course is the number one thing, right? And then we use the career, as the kind of excuse, because we're trying to do everything for our family. And then what comes at the cost, of course, is the health. So you've got career for the family. So that's kind of, even though it's top, it comes second. And then the thing at the bottom is the health. And actually, when I think about my whole career, that has pretty much been the case. And I've got a family, and now I've got two kids, two young children, and I think whether you're you're in an equal partnership, as far as career or salary, whatever, or not, it doesn't really make a difference. That pressure to kind of have that responsibility, I think is very apparent to many people. So I think what's important to me right now, and having thought about this as far as my career and previous, and how I want things to be going forward, because of course the problem is that people, of course, feel trapped, and that they have to go and continue like this because they can't get out of it. And so you kind of need this exit strategy thinking, or a way to be able to break out of it. It's easy to say. And so that's really what I've tried to think. Well, how can I break out of that and reorder so that health is number one, because there's no point in me being, or anyone being wealthy, whatever that means, if you're sick, and then you can't be there for your family. And it sounds so simple, but it's so true. So my focus is, how can I be the healthy so that I'm there for my family, so that then I can, enjoy the time with them, and obviously, provide and be the best person for them. So that's something that we're doing, and with the Supply Chain Pro, it's perfect because it combines all of my years' experience and contacts and everything else. So that's something that I can provide hopefully to people that's valuable. But then I can also balance that, with my family and of course with my health. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. They're all kind of, it's like a triangle, isn't it? They're all kind of interlinked with each other. And like I say, if you focus on your health first, and whether that's physical health or mental health, then that will have a positive impact on the other two. I think focusing just on your career is only going to have a partial positive effect on the family bit, isn't it? But still, there's sacrifices that are made there. So turning the triangle around slightly and focus on it, I definitely agree with that. It's so easy to get kind of sucked into that trap of I need to work hard to achieve this goal. And yeah, absolutely, hard work is very merited. But step back, like take a step back, kind of, even if it's just a case of just talking to people and collaborating and sharing kind of what's going on, your frustrations, kind of your successes, your failures, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It kind of grounds you in a bit of reality, doesn't it? And
to be honest, you got to take it seriously because, I can imagine what anyone is thinking listening to this in that way. Okay, it's easy to say, but I've got responsibilities. I've got a job. I can't just reprioritize. But actually, if you really think about it, and if that's important to you, then most likely you're going to have to go outside your comfort zone in order to make the change. Okay, and that's exactly really what what I've had to do, and I've consistently gone out comfort zone, so that's not a problem for me. But to go outside the comfort zone and prioritize health over my career, that is the outside the comfort zone for me. And then of course with my business head or entrepreneurial head, had think, okay, well, how can I still create something that is of value to someone, so. But that came last, and so it's difficult concept to get around, but it definitely can be done, and that's why I would like to raise it for people just to at least start to think about it, and there are ways, and it can be done. You don't have to sacrifice, your family and your health for your career, it can be done, and people like yourselves. Like you said, you've broken out, and you said yourself you wish you'd done it earlier. And, especially today, with younger people going and doing degrees where there are 25, 30% attendance rates. No one's going to lectures anymore. I was reading something the other day. And, what is the value of a degree today? This is a whole, another subject. But, okay, if you want to be a doctor, lawyer, of course, you need to go and study. But apart from that, do you really need to go to university? I'm not quite sure. But what's the value of actually going out and creating something, especially nowadays with what's happening with AI and of course with with the tools that are available to someone that's young, and coming out of school or coming out of university. So the value of actually just creating something and failing is incredibly valuable in my opinion.
Best thing that ever happened to me was failing my A levels the first time around, because I wasn't really bought into it. Obviously, we're going back quite some years now, but I did my A levels because that's what you did. It was kind of you follow on to the sixth form after secondary school. All my mates did it, and then they went off to university, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I didn't want to do. I was just kind of in no man's land. So failed, and then spent a year working. Kind of dropped into a job in retail. Working in the local Iceland, which definitely cemented what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. So and then doing that for a year, then I went and I focused, and the rest is history. I've had a fairly successful career in sales and recruitment since then. But yeah, it's failure is just part of the journey. It's like as soon as you can kind of embrace that, and that's a comfort zone for a lot of people, isn't it? Always kind of striving for yes and kind of gratification if they're doing a good job. It's like soon if you can kind of approach it with, well, I need to fail to get to the result I want, because otherwise how am I going to learn? Then that's liberating, I think. Brill. So that ties up quite nicely. So let's move on then to some next bits of the show. So do you have any you mentioned about hiring, the importance of hiring. Have you got any interesting stories or favorite stories about things that when it comes to hiring designers, I guess, or engineers, where something went really well or conversely horribly wrong?
I mean, over the course of the years, hired, and unfortunately had to fire people. I think, first of all, I would say, I've worked both in startup, as in other people's startup. I've worked in fast-growing companies like TomTom, and I've worked in blue chip corporate, and I've also set up and run and exited two startups of my own, and now I'm doing my third. So I've had to hire and understand the process and hone that process over 20 odd years. And first of all, I think apart from actually creating technologies and getting them into the hands of people, I actually love the hiring process. I love hiring people because apart when you have a business, whether it's your own or you're working for a company, apart from the basic fact of creating something that people want, i.e. value that they want to pay for, the most important thing is the people, of course, and the hiring of people. And personally, I just love creating the teams and finding them and fitting them together. And I see it quite a lot like a football team, and you need certain strengths in different areas, as far as the team is concerned, and I love piecing that together, and it's something that I really do enjoy. And I mean, look, I think that you're never going to have 100% hire rate, and
No.
It is incredibly, nobody wins when someone doesn't work out, because the time, it's just the time, because obviously when you bring someone in, you've got to onboard them, you've got to get them in line, obviously, with your way of working and your culture and everything else. So I think for me, I mean, I don't have specific stories, but my learnings are from the ones that were successful to the ones that weren't. Was first of all, of course, the technical side of things, and I would always, give someone an opportunity to work on something within their field. So if they're an engineer, design engineer or whatever, get them to do a design test. We'd have a standard design test, and have it so it's quite open. I'll purposely leave it open so that then, if you get 3 people doing the same thing, like let's say you narrowed it down, you get 3 very different approaches, or you would certainly want to see the different approaches. And what's really important is the presentation, because even if you're a software, and person sitting behind a computer or whatever, that's a bit stereotypical. Sorry, software engineers. But you want someone that can communicate, and how do they talk and how do they present their ideas. So I think this is a really, really critical thing. And just the obviously within reason, the amount of touch points that you can have with someone, in the different, obviously on the phone, obviously we can do on voice calls or Teams or whatever, but if you can, if it's possible, the face-to-face as well, interaction is really important, because you then start to learn about that person and understand a little bit more, and get behind, kind of the layers a little bit, and peel back. So, I think that's really important. And then I think the other things that really makes the difference is what I would call kind of the hunger behind that person. What is their hunger? What is their motivation? And, kind of what's their background, and, what is driving them, to kind of want to work with you or your team, or, what have you. So, normally it's kind of when those things have been combined, that I've done, then they tend to be more positive, more positive hires. And I've had some that have come, and I haven't done that, and it's been a complete mismatch, and they kind of don't lasted, but you can only try your best, and you put the time in, and take it seriously. Of course, as you get bigger and as you have bigger teams, that's the problem. With growth, you have less and less time to do that. Because you're obviously, you got other things to do. But
you've got to delegate.
It is, you have to. But it's incredibly important that at least you teach someone that's the way it could be done.
I my favourite thing about interviewing people is when you ask that one question and it really resonates with them, and you see them light up, and they're true. They step out of that interview mode almost, because some people are very rehearsed and can be borderline robotic and nervous, But as soon as you ask them something and it triggers a passionate response, because you can see it, you can see their eyes light up. So I'm always, whenever I've interviewed people, either for kind of clients or for businesses I've worked for, I'll always ask them things just to trigger that kind of, so what are you passionate about? Kind of what do you do when you're not doing this, And let's talk around that, because then you're going to get a true reflection of them, and see whether they might fit in with the team as well, because that's as big as the technical skills for me. Is are they going to have a positive impact, and are they going to be coachable? Are they going to resonate and all that kind of stuff? So, do you have a favorite question that you like to ask, kind of regardless of the skill set, that kind of might tease out some of that personality?
I think it's mainly around, I think it's kind of like, what's important to them, both professionally and personally. What, again, it's kind of what you were saying, as a person, you're trying to really understand, who this person is, right? So you're trying to understand, is this person naturally, introverted or extroverted? And there's no wrong or right answer there, and then, you want to try and understand, obviously, what their motivations are, and how, depending on the job, what your job role is and your requirement, how they're going to operate or handle the different situations within that, which is basically let's call it, different stress levels. So, I maybe not so directly, but indirectly, I would ask them, how do they handle stress, or how do they handle stressful situations? And that can be both at work, and that can be obviously, at home or personal. And again, there's no wrong or right answer. So you got to try to understand, okay, how does this person respond? And normally when you ask them about that, you then again start to get under the layers a little bit, because they will give you insight into kind of how they think and how they operate within certain situations. So for me, that's really important. Try to understand that.
Great. That's a great one. Yeah, you get a lot of insight from their responses there as well. So we're rapidly approaching time, Ash, but
Sure.
I'll blitz through a few quick
Yeah.
fire questions. So, favorite book or podcast that you're reading or listening to at the moment?
I would say one of the books I've been reading recently is called Atomic Habits by James
Oh yeah.
Clear, and I thoroughly recommend anyone read this book. And it's an amazing book, and it's really about this small. This sounds very,
It's quite a famous one, isn't it? Atomic Habits. I've not read it, but it's on the reading list.
It's very good. It's about making those small gains, every day, and it is about forming habits. And it's made a really big impact, to me and the way that I treat, like I said, the balance that I was talking about earlier with regards to health and career and family, and so that is. Yeah, really good. Highly recommend.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes back to your kind of put yourself out of your comfort zone as well, doesn't it? Because to form habits, it takes about 60 days, I think, of continuously doing it. So that's quite off-putting for a lot of people, and it again puts you out of the comfort zone. But it's so worth it if you can stick to something and form that habit. It'll change your life. So wonderful. Any quick tips in terms of how designers or engineers can stand out from the crowd in the current market? If you had a design engineer post, how would they kind of stand out from the applications that you might have?
I'll tell you what I did.
Go on.
That got me a job. So look, I think, as you said, you said the word, stand out from the crowd, and I know it's very difficult, especially when you're early stage career. You don't have much to go on, okay? But there's no really excuse now, because you can have so much access to information, and you can produce things very, very quickly, and that's not cheating, So, for example, if you're applying for let's say design or engineering for a company, let's say Samsung or Apple, or wherever it's a smaller company, you can find out about the products that they're doing. You can potentially see that they have a roadmap, and then you might say, okay, if I was to come in and let's say this is aligns with the job role, for example, design engineer or something, or a creative, you could say, this would be my roadmap for the next 5 years, low, middle, or entry, mid, and high tier, and these would be the features and the technologies that I would do, right? And I mean, just going along to an interview and discussing that and showing them, and I mean, just imagine how crazy you could take that idea, right? I mean, you could go all the way to actually designing the whole thing and designing engineering it. You could even create a model. You could 3D print it, right? So can you imagine if you did that and you went along to the interview? Do you think anyone else would do that? No.
Absolutely not. Well,
right.
it's there's a lot of work, but if it's something you're passionate about, you want to get into that brand, why not?
Yeah.
Because you could always use that somewhere else, couldn't you?
Exactly. So it's a learning thing for yourself, because if that, if that's something you're taking seriously and you really want to get into, because you're only going to do that if you're really passionate about it or you really want the job. And so this goes back to what I was saying before about, desire and hunger. You want, everyone wants the job. That's why they're there in the first place. But you want hire that person that really wants it, that really wants it. And so how do you determine what that is? So if you can do something that's related, that you create yourself, whether it's I did a tear down. So I went to work for a company, I won't say who it is, but I got their product. I got the product of their competitor, and I tore it down and I did a tear down report. And I sent it to them. I said, this is what I think, and this is how your competitor is making everything. And I priced up every single part to give them an estimated BOM cost. It probably wasn't accurate, maybe 5-10%, but it just showed, my thought. And it was actually useful to them.
So. Absolutely, yeah. So That's a great tip. That will definitely, I'll definitely snippet that out and pop it out on the socials. So
Yeah, no worries.
wonderful. So it, we'll wrap this up now. Then, so but in terms of how people can reach out to you, I'll share your LinkedIn profile on the show notes. Obviously, we'll tag you on on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. But is there any other way that people can reach out to you that you'd like them to do so? Email or anything like that?
Yeah, of course, LinkedIn's probably
Yeah.
the most obvious way. You can email
Yeah.
me, which is ash at supply, which is SUPLI, chainpro.com. So that's my email. But yeah, get me through there or through LinkedIn is
Cool.
fine.
And then finally, any shout outs that you'd like to give before we wrap up?
Just to you, I guess. So yeah, shout
Thank you
out
very much.
to Chris Whyte for producing these podcasts, and yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed them and think it's great what you're doing. So yeah, really appreciate it and appreciate your time spending with me, and yeah, enjoyed our chat.
No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please like and subscribe and tell all of your friends. In the meantime, just a quick note from me. In addition to hosting this podcast, I'm also the founder of Kodu, a specialist recruitment business focused exclusively on physical product development. For a little over a decade now, I've worked exclusively within physical product design and engineering, helping startups and established brands hire mechanical design and development talent, from midweight up to C-suite. I've worked in consumer electronics, e-bikes, femtech, medical devices, design consultancy, basically user-focused stuff. And it's the wonderful people I've met over the years that have inspired me to create this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Kodu and how we work, please head over to teamkodu.com or message me, Chris Whyte, on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening.